Alright, in this video I want to talk about a little DIY project. I'm starting with my McIntosh MI75 monoblocks. If you like DIY and vintage amps, you may like this video. I'm essentially going to try to create faceplates for these amps and rack mount them. But before I go any further, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, what the heck is an MI75? Well, I'm sure you've heard of the McIntosh MC275. It's the iconic push-pull tube amplifier introduced by McIntosh in 1961. It had remained so popular since the 60s that McIntosh revived this amp with a reissue in the 1990s, and it continues to remain popular, so McIntosh kept producing these amps over the past few decades. I believe we're currently at the 6th iteration of this amp with MC275 Mark VI. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that McIntosh also introduced a monoblock version of this amp in 1961 as MC75. The MC75 has also remained popular enough over the decades for McIntosh to have reissued this mono amp at least a couple of times. So the MC275 is a stereo tube amp capable of 75 watts per channel with a total power of 150 watts, while the MC75 is rated for 75 watts, so when paired with another monoblock, it gives us the same 150 watts of total power. Now, what even fewer people know is that McIntosh made an industrial version of the MC75 in the form of MI75. The I in the MI stands for industrial. In fact, McIntosh has made quite a few industrial amps, and the MI75 happens to be one of them. What that means is that these amps were not sold for home stereo use, but rather for industrial use in movie theaters, for PA systems, and other applications in industry for mechanical and vibration testing and so on. The MI75 is similar to the MC75, but it comes with even beefier transformers for enabling additional connections and capabilities. So let's look at what's really different between these amps. First of all, the MI has these industrial transformers, which are supposed to be more robust and beefier than the MC transformers. And from my research, I was able to gather the information on the specific transformers used for the MC versus MI75 amps. For example, the MC275 has 3 transformers, 1 power transformer and 2 output transformers, 1 per channel. To be specific, it uses the M215 transformer for power and the M216A and M216B for output, whereas the MC75, being the monoblock amp, just uses 2 transformers, 1 for power and 1 for output. Specifically, it uses the M211 transformer for power and the M212 transformer for output. Now, the MI75, also being a mono amp, uses just 2 transformers, but it's important to note that these are not the same transformers as the MC75 transformers. The MI75 specifically uses the M218 transformer for power and the M219 for output. And why am I talking about transformers so much? Well, that's what really makes the amp apart from the tubes. The transformers are what defines how the amp is going to sound and defines the capabilities of the amp. McIntosh's unique winding of these transformers and their unity coupled design, as they call it, is what makes a McIntosh tube amp a McIntosh, or the classic Marantz tube amp a Marantz. These amps have stood the test of time, and their design remains unparalleled, mostly because of these transformers. Anyway, I digress. So even though all of these transformers have the McIntosh unity coupled design, McIntosh has used different transformers for each of these amplifiers because of the specific needs and capabilities of these amps, with MI75 having the larger and more robust transformers for industrial needs. For example, the MC275 is capable of running in both stereo and mono mode, whereas the MI75 potentially needs to be operating 24/7 in an industrial setting and being able to connect to various other industrial equipment. So the needs here are quite different. McIntosh describes some of these features in the MI75 owner's manual, as you can see here. It says, a special feature of the MI75 is the large amount of output impedance and voltage taps provided. And it goes on to list those impedance and voltage taps provided. And you can see that here on the amp. It has all these additional options for connections for industrial use, but of course it also has all the usual connections needed for home stereo use. Talking about some other differences, it does not have the trademark McIntosh black and chrome finish. Rather, it has this silver hammer tone finish that I've come to like over time. The dimensions are different as well. The MI75 is longer with the standard width of 19 inches, which makes it rack mountable, compared to the 16.75 inches on the MC75. Another cool thing about these MIs is that they were special ordered by customers or companies, hence most of them have a unique custom ID tag on them. For example, these tags on my amps belonging to Eastman Kodak Company, or the US Air Force, or the US Army Corps of Engineers or NASA. So it could be any number of custom ID tags on these units. So let's talk about my particular units here. I absolutely love these amps, and they're currently my endgame amps. I'm just happy that these amps with the right tubes have made me stop chasing and looking for anything better. Is there anything better out there? I'm sure, but I'm not looking for it because these amps give me everything I want in my sound. Having said that, when I bought my first pair of these amps, they did not come with the original faceplates. In fact, they didn't come with any faceplates. These are really rare, hard to find industrial amps, so the faceplates on most of these amps are usually damaged or missing, or the customer had them in their own custom enclosure, or who knows what happened to them. And because these amps do not have the faceplate, the whole front or bottom, depending on how you look at it, is open and exposed. In fact, the feet that you see on this amp here, these were DIY'd from various non-related parts from Home Depot. And also what you do not see here is there's a panel under there, because it's missing the faceplate that would go here. There's a panel under there that I can't access. Let me actually flip it over so you can see what I'm talking about. There it is. So this is the natural position of this amp. This is how it's supposed to be positioned because it's supposed to be rack mounted. And that there, ladies and gentlemen, actually, wait, YouTube is actually telling me that there's exactly 0 ladies watching my videos. So that there, gentlemen, is the joy and pain of living with vintage gear. In some ways, you're screwed if something goes wrong. There is no support whatsoever. And in some cases, you can't find parts, let alone original parts. You can't find any parts, period. But the good part is, in a way, you can take complete control and ownership of what happens with your gear. And you can decide to get creative and maybe even try to make things better. Personally, I'm a purist, so I like my vintage gear as original as possible, but in case something goes out of spec or needs replacement, I will only replace that specific part that needs replacement, preferably with the same exact specs as the original. So I try to find the original part, and if that's not available, I find the next best option that is as close to original as possible. And also, over time, with vintage gear, any sort of weak points or substandard design or parts used by the original manufacturers would have shown themselves over the decades. So you can find great information on forums about what to replace or what kind of problems a particular amp is prone to, because these amps have just been around for so long that everything good and bad about them is out there and pretty well documented. So I guess that's another good thing. So let me tell you the good and the bad about my specific amps here. First, the good. 1, they were serviced and brought up to spec by one of the best techs in Southern California and configured for home audio use and not industrial use. 2, they are in great shape for an extremely rare tube amp. 3, they sound phenomenal, enough for me to end my audiophile journey and stop looking for anything better. So that's all good. Now, as for the bad, they didn't come with the original faceplates, which have been really hard to find in the past year or so. I've been looking for them, and it's really hard to even create if I wanted to. 2, this bottom here being completely exposed creates all kinds of risks, from dirt or dust getting in there to electrocution. So yeah, I don't like that. 3, the inability to rack mount these and prop them up in this position so that I have access to this panel here, to these buttons and knobs. I'm unable to do that right now because of the missing faceplate. I can't put them up like this because of everything being exposed. So I lose access to this panel here unless I rack mount them. And finally, the last point, they're super heavy. So moving these around without the faceplates presents another challenge, as there's not enough surface area to hold on to. And these edges here, they're not sharp, but they're quite thin. And with all that weight, I have to be very careful to make sure I don't hurt myself. Now, these are all limitations that can be addressed and solved for. And that's why I'm embarking on this DIY project. I hope to achieve 2 things with this DIY project. 1, I want to get or create faceplates for these amps so that the amp looks complete and it's not missing anything. And I preferably want the faceplates to look as close to original as possible. And 2, I want to rack mount them. They were designed to be rack mounted. That would help with moving these amps around, would make them much more manageable. And of course, I will also have access to the panel here. I don't know if I'm going to be using these buttons and knobs all that often, but at least I would have access to them. So that's about it. That's it for this video. Just wanted to introduce these amps and provide some background around what I'm trying to solve for and achieve with the DIY project. So if you like vintage amps and DIY, you may like this project and videos. It's not much of a DIY around anything electrical. It's mostly around faceplates and rack mounting. And I don't know how often or when I'll upload next videos. I don't know if I will upload videos as I work on it or maybe upload them after I've completed a milestone. We'll see. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll try to address the faceplates in my next video. Thank you.